One clarity mistake keeps founders from raising millions, no matter how great their product is. And I've seen this firsthand whilst helping founders raise over $250 million. dollars. And it starts before you ever really mention your product, if I'm being honest. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to avoid this mistake with the exact system that turned Sarah's confusing pitch into investor-ready clarity. But first, let me show you what happened when Sarah finally got clear on her insight. She'd been pitching her health startup for months, getting polite, I'll think about it responses. And the problem was really she was just trying to explain her business like this. So what she was saying was, we're building an AI powered platform that leverages machine learning to optimize clinical workflows and improve patient outcomes through data driven insights. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of buzzwords in there and it doesn't really mean anything. And she's just trying to say everything she can possible. And the problem is that investors would nod politely, but their eyes glazed over. Probably the same thing you did. But what we did is we then worked on her insight clarity, and she started saying this instead. So what she was saying was, doctors are drowning in paperwork instead of saving lives. What if we could give them back 2 hours every day to actually practice medicine? How would that improve not only their lives, but also the patients that they're working with? This was the same business, but a completely different response to what she was doing and how she was building her business. And she was able to raise $2 million just from doing this. Now, did you notice what changed? Because Sarah didn't change her product or her market. She just got crystal clear on her insight, i.e. the unique way that she sees the problem that others miss. And what really happens here is the first version was founder speak. It was technical jargon that only really she understood and that she's in the trenches with every day. But the second version was insight speak. It was a perspective so clear that anyone can immediately grasp why it matters and how she'll change the world and the insights that she gained from doing all of those kind of things. Now, I should mention, as someone who's raised $16 million as a founder, but really failed my first two startups and invested over $200 million as a VC, I've seen this pattern hundreds of times, both personally for me and also the ones I've helped, where it's brilliant founders with game-changing ideas who can't get funded because they can't clearly explain what they see to other people who don't know as much as them. And here's the brutal truth. If you can't explain your business to a 5-year-old, you can't explain it to an investor, and that's because you're not getting insight clarity in what you're doing. And if an investor doesn't immediately understand your unique insights, they'll never understand why they should write you a check. And this is usually the problem that founders have when it comes to fundraising. And because of this, most founders suffer from what I call founder fog, i.e. they're so deep in their business, they've lost the ability to see it from the outside. Maybe you know your industry really deeply, you know your customers, you know the technology inside and out, and you're working on it every day. But that knowledge usually becomes a curse when you're trying to communicate with investors who are looking at so many different things at the same time and don't have as much knowledge as you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the exact system that I use to help founders break through this fog and achieve what I call insight clarity, to communicate your unique perspective about your industry, your product, whatever it is, so clearly that investors immediately understand why your business needs to exist. And that's going to make sure that you can fundraise in the best way possible, and which in turn makes you 10 times more likely to raise investment when you do decide to meet investors. Now, there are 5 specific areas where founders need absolute clarity before they can really craft compelling narratives. And the first one sets up the foundation for how we get investors on board instantly. Because here's the thing, right? Most founders describe their problem in vague, generic terms like healthcare is inefficient. But that's the thing, that is what founder fog is. Investors want to feel the problem, not just hear it. So let's go back to Sarah, for example. So she went from technical jargon to doctors are drowning in paperwork instead of saving lives. And suddenly everyone gets it. It's not about the features of their product. It's not about what they've done, etc. It's saying this is the problem that people are having and this is the things that is causing it. But how would you apply this? You need to rewrite what your problem statement so a 5-year-old could picture it. So if it sounds like a textbook, you need to start over. And then the biggest thing you need to do is you need to make them feel the human cost of inaction if this problem actually stays the same. But even if you nail the problem, most founders fail into the next trap, which is describing their solution in the same foggy way. Because investors don't just want to know what you're building, they want to know why you're building it that way. Here's the mistake. Founders will say, we use AI to optimize workflows, for example, but that's the how. But what we really want to do is we want to get to the why, because that's what really investors care about. They care about the why. So for example, if we come back to Sarah stopped talking about a technology and started saying, we give doctors their time back. Suddenly her solution was about people, not just features. And it was going into the solution of what the actual human impact was feeling from the problem and then into the solution. So I just want to ask yourself, why did I choose a solution? Not just what it does. You need to make your answer about the impact, not the tech. But the thing is, now you've nailed the problem and made your solution about real people, not just about the features. There's another important layer that most founders miss, one that can make investors lean in and say, what did you just say? Because most founders talk about the size of their market or just repeat what everyone else sees. But real insights is really about spotting what others overlook. And that's the difference between a great insight and something that everyone else is saying the same thing. And Sarah, for example, we might come back to her. What she realized is that while everyone was adding more tech for doctors, what doctors actually wanted was less admin and not more apps. Now that's a non-obvious opportunity that investors love, because she was building her product completely different to everyone else. And because of that, it made the thing that investors cared about. So what you want to ask yourself is, what do I see about this market that most people miss? If your answer sounds obvious, you need to dig deeper, because that's what this point is. It's the market insight. But even with the sharpest market insight, it's not enough on its own. Investors want to know, why are you the one to solve this? And that's where the next step comes into, which is, what's your founder insight? And where does that founder insight come into your process to really make investors love you? Because your story isn't just about your resume, it's about the moment you saw the real problem. Coming back to Sarah, for example, Sarah didn't just say, my father was a doctor. She shared how paperwork stole his evenings, forcing him to choose between family and patients. And understanding how she did that and how she moved into being a doctor herself and came across the same problems that she thought she never had to deal with. That's the kind of founder insight that makes investors believe you'll never give up. But the thing is, like, how do you do this? What do you do? You don't have necessarily Sarah's examples and history to do that. Well, you need to sit down. You need to share the moment you realize the true problem. If it's just your job history, go deeper, but find the turning point that made you decide to do this instead of everything else that you could have done. Because there's a reason you did this. There's a reason why you're doing this startup and all the other things that you could have done, whether it's different startups, whether it's going back into a 9-to-5, all of these kind of things. And finally, even with all this clarity, investors want to know where you're headed. What's the future that you see that others don't? Vision isn't just about better software or more efficiency. It's the world you're building, the one that only you can really see, but the one that when you do make that happen, investors can feel like they want to be a part of that. Coming back to Sarah, she wasn't just fixing health. She was creating a world where doctors remember why they became doctors. That's the kind of future investors want to be a part of, because if they see that, if they feel that this changes how doctors work and how they think about their day-to-day, and they want to be a part of that, that's what allowed them for her to raise the money she did. So those are the 5 clarity points, but here's why the system works. Investors don't invest into businesses. They never have. They invest into insights, they invest into people, and they want to back founders who see opportunities that others miss. And by having these 5 clarity insights, and when you put all of these 5 components together, you're not just pitching a product, you're not just pitching your business, you're sharing a perspective that makes investors think, they see something I don't, and I want to be a part of this future, and I want to actually invest and spend more time in it. Now, here's how you achieve this clarity in 3 simple steps when you're going through all of those 5. So step 1 is what I call the 5-year-old test. For each component, write it out, and then ask, could a 5-year-old understand this? If not, simplify until they could. And really trying to hone into, how do I make this as simple as possible with someone that completely understands what it is? Next is step 2, which is the outsider test. You need to find someone, preferably even a 5-year-old, someone, family, friend, or tech. It doesn't have to be necessarily that. You need to find someone who knows nothing about your industry, but explain your insight to them. And if they don't immediately get why it matters, you're still in founder fog. And then the last step, which is the emotional test, which is, does your insight make people feel something? For example, Sarah's insight was about doctors choosing between family and patients, which creates an immediate emotional connection. And we really honed into, how do we do that? And we needed to find out what that emotional connection was. And that's not something that you can solve instantly, but you need to keep working at it and understand it. But one more thing to add is, I see founders get this wrong all the time. You think clarity means dumbing down your idea, but clarity isn't just about making your idea simpler. It's about making your insight more obvious, and you have something here that's different to everyone else. So don't just confuse technical complexity with insight depth, because the most profound insights are often the simplest to understand. And if you can't make it simple, then you don't understand it enough to make it simple. So look, that's what this video is all about. It's really about how insight clarity is the foundational kind of aspect of all fundraising, to be honest with you. You learn those 5 components that kind of transform founder fog into investor clarity. But once you have this clarity, there's a specific way to structure these insights into stories that investors can't resist. So if you want to learn that advanced narrative framework, check out my next video where I show you the exact story structure that's helped founders close over $250 million when it comes to answering the harder questions.